Love is our true divine nature, and our heart serves as the intersection of the spiritual and physical, connecting our soul with our body as the conduit for anchoring our divinity onto the earth plane. Embodying our divinity is the key to our ascension and to manifesting our highest destiny in this life. The teachings of the heart are alchemy. Join spiritual mentor and channel Jennifer Spohr each week on a sacred journey to lift the veil to remembering your divinity and meet other beautiful souls who are living the path of the awakened heart. Hey, I am super excited to welcome as a guest to the show today, Rachael Jayne Groover. She is the best-selling author of Powerful and Feminine and Divine Breadcrumbs. She is the founder and CEO of the Awaken School, which offers cutting-edge programs to help those in their second or third active life find meaningful purpose and awaken their impact. Rachael Jayne, it's wonderful to have you. Welcome.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's good to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you here and to have the opportunity to have this conversation with you today. I'd love for you to share with us what inspired you to this work, to where you are today. Like, what was the catalyst?
Well, there's always a flow of change in that, because when I think back to the early days of doing personal development work and spiritual development work for myself, the catalyst was pain. I mean, I think it's always some sort of pain that makes you go, why is my life so difficult right now? Or why don't I have this? Or why don't I have that? And I was really interested from a very early age, thinking about how can I be more? What can I do more? Why do I create my own life the way I do? I bought Tony Robbins' Personal Power 2 cassettes, when I was like maybe 19 years old. So I was really young in the scheme of things when I was interested in that. But I had a lot of trouble in relationships with men as I was growing up. I wanted to be a singer. I was a singer and songwriter for a decade back in Australia, but was struggling with, how do I get seen and all of that, the confidence. So there wasn't really one catalyst moment. It was a hodgepodge of being in my late teens, 20s, going, why don't I have the perfect life? And trying to figure it out. And at the same time, over there in Australia, I live here in Colorado now, but it was the time when Oprah was starting to have all of her guests on, like 1998, 1999, where Gary Zukov and Dr. Phil, and I don't know if you remember those times back then.
Oh, yes. Yes. Although I was a bit of a later bloomer in terms of my personal development, but yes.
Yeah. Well, that's great. You look young, so that makes sense. And yeah, I just was really struck with, wow, there's so much on offer, particularly in the United States. And that was a big catalyst to draw me to want to move here, because there was so much personal and spiritual development work, which was not happening in Australia back then.
Yeah. In terms of actually starting your own business, did you feel guided toward that and then resist it for a while, or
oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I was, well, actually I've always had my own business. I mean, I was a singer, and so I had to find the gigs, I had to market, I had to get all of that going. And I had a vocal studio, so I had to figure out clients for that and what have you. And before that, I was a cleaning lady, and I had to get my own clients. So I've always been that way inclined, but I didn't think of it as I am a business owner. It was just that's what you do when you sing or clean or do something like that. But when you asked me that question, I was thinking more later in life when I started the Awaken School. And so right before that, I was working for Neale Donald Walsch, who wrote the Conversations with God books, the book series. And he was helping him do his retreats and workshops and trainings and things like that, which was really cool, because I got to be in a company that was doing personal development work all the time and got to see what the industry was like. And so at that point, halfway through my 6 years, or maybe a little longer than that, working for them, I had the very strong hit that I was meant to do this myself. I wasn't meant to just get the tissues and the tea ready for him. It was like, I'm supposed to be in the front of the room doing this. And I resisted that for quite some time, because on one hand, it was a dream, and on the other hand was a need for a secure paycheck. And so it was really just the fear of, oh my gosh, if I leave my job and I go out on my own, like I'm a nobody knows me. I haven't written, the 20 best-selling books. I even had someone at the office who knew that I had this dream said, I wouldn't do it because, Neil's famous and you're not. And it was kind of that seeping into my psyche that stopped me. And also just the terror of putting yourself out there, and having to do videos and emails and ask for payment for your coaching or whatever it is you're doing. It's when you start that, it's really scary.
Yeah, I've always felt and experienced over the years, being an entrepreneur, going out on your own is the greatest test, I believe, of, self-worth, what you think about yourself, your mindset.
Absolutely.
When you're an entrepreneur, all of that comes out.
All of your stuff comes up. Exactly. My husband and I were business partners, and we always laugh about that because everyone would say marriage is the biggest test. It will bring up all your stuff. And we look at each other and go, marriage is nothing on business, doing your own business, because it's not only relationships with people, it's your own worth, it's asking for money, doing all these other things as well. And we call business a spiritual practice. Like it calls you. It
really is. Yeah, it really is. I so agree with you, because I'm married as well, and I mean, yeah, marriage has its own tests for sure, but oh no, I think being an entrepreneur and being a spiritual entrepreneur, essentially, being someone who works in the personal development industry, it's a whole other ball game for sure.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to share with us, if you feel guided, what would you say was, like the most painful, or what was the deepest challenge that you experienced on your journey to really, like, we're eternal students, right? But there's a process of, whether you want to refer to it as being in a dark night of the soul, or, just going through a season of feeling extremely tested. What was the biggest obstacle or block that you overcame to coming out on the other side of that?
Well, two come to mind. One was what I would call my dark night of the soul period for a few years. And the other I would call the real big core issue that I've had to get through, that has taken me 20 years to get through. So my dark night of the soul was, I had a very significant back injury just at the same time as I was about to leave the company that I was working with. So everything was kind of, I was going to move on or do something, but I was still scared. And I was hit by the universal 2x4 of hurting my back significantly, seriously, in England. I was traveling at the time, and I got stuck over there for many months. I couldn't move. I couldn't walk on my own for a while. I was in significant pain for many years of my life, to a place where I was bedridden for a lot of it. And so having that happen at the time where everything's just going to work out in this new business and this new was very, very difficult for me to deal with, particularly being in the personal development realm and really understanding the power of creating your own reality and manifesting what you do. And there I am feeling a lot of shame with, why am I put myself in this situation where I can't get out of? So that was very, very difficult. And then the one that I'd say was probably more important over the long term was my dealing with my core issue of fear of your judgment of me, really caring what you thought of me. And that every time I would come up to a decision point of, well, I could do this or I could do that, the fear of being judged about it would pull me back way too often. And that, for many, I think a lot of people probably listening can relate to that. But what they can do is also look at how much that's still playing out as far as putting the brakes on, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. And I could see how it was putting the brakes on to my core message. Because when I first started, the message was really about my first book, Powerful and Feminine. How can you be in your feminine essence and be powerful and not just reject the feminine just because we've grown up in a culture of being more masculine, at least in those who are 45 and better these days. But it wasn't, and I remember being told by a friend of mine and a kinesiology of mine, like, that's not what you're here on the planet for. I mean, it's part of it, but you're really a spiritual teacher. And I was like, oh, I mean, I remember when he said that, like my throat closed over. I'm like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. And it was all really about the fear of what other people would think. And so it has taken, a good 15 years of solid work around that, of not really caring of what someone else is thinking when I say something on stage, or even now in the realm of cancel culture, and everyone's kind of worried about what they're going to say, and is it going to be PC or what, all of that. Like, it's pretty heightened for us as entrepreneurs to be tuned in, but not be caring about that. And I think I did a lot of my psychological work or shadow work around it, but it really didn't drop fully until I had my spiritual awakening experience, or I call it a year of a big continuous spiritual awakening experience for about a 12-month period, when it just disappeared. It wasn't from my work, my inner work on getting rid of judgment. It was something very significant changed in my perception of the world, which I would call the waking up or the spiritual awakening experience, and it was done.
Was there any one catalyst to that significant awakening that you describe, or was it a series of events?
It was a series of events, which is always the case for people who are going through that spiritual awakening experience, but there was some ones that are definitely worth saying. One was, I woke up on New Year's Day, this is 2018, and I was setting my resolutions and my goals for the year, and the thought just arrived, it dropped in. It was very clear it wasn't coming from my strategic mind. And it said, you don't believe that you can reach enlightenment this year. I mean, this lifetime. It wasn't this year, it was this lifetime. You don't believe that you can do that. And it was like this weirdest kind of thought. And I'm like, you're right. I don't believe that that's really, I mean, even with all the work that I did, there was something about it that was like, oh, that's mysterious. Enlightenment's mysterious. And it's kind of, only left for the real rock stars of spirituality, the Dalai Lama and the, Eckhart Tolle got through the door with Oprah's help, but like, it was kind of this mysterious thing. And so I had some really, internal moments that day of like, no, I want to set that as my intention. And so I did a very, very strong and sincere setting of spiritual awakening, even though if I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, I was doing that all the time. I was reading all these books and I was meditating. I've been meditating for 20 years. Like, I've been doing but it wasn't like, no, this is what I'm up to. Nothing, no entrepreneurial journey, not my marriage, nothing is more important than this. And within 5 months, I was in a retreat writing my third book, which will come out this year, most likely, or early 2024. And I was in a highly receptive place for 5 days. And what was coming through was clarity around how important being in a receiving state is for spiritual awakening to occur. So I'm kind of in the receiving mode for days on end. I'm in Hawaii, so that helps, because you just want to be in that energy receiving. And writing about it and realizing how often I was not in that. And then the 2 days after that retreat finished, I kind of shifted into that altered state of consciousness for a long time. And that year was working with some of the parts where the ego kind of wanted to contract back into separate self, but mostly it was holding like, I'm not who I thought I was. And then the bookend of that year, I was at another retreat in a highly receptive experience. And that at that experience, I really saw the other piece that kind of dropped that I'm not Rachael Jayne. I thought I was Rachael Jayne, but I'm not Rachael Jayne. I'm not that person, that personality. Even though I knew that conceptually for a long time, I didn't embody the realization of it. So my ego wouldn't keep snapping back into place. It really held, and it's been a very different experience since 2019 to now we're in 2023 if you're listening to this, that came from intention, receptivity, and practices that help the ego not snapping back on itself after a spiritual awakening experience, because a lot of people have those altered reality experiences or Satori experience or whatever you want to call it, where you see reality in a different way, but they usually don't last more than a few hours or days or weeks, because then the separate self comes and kind of pulls you back into reality. And so how to work with that so it doesn't do that. And of course, since that happened, all my work is about that. And it goes back into your first, question of like, what had to happen, or what was your biggest issue, which was I'm scared of people and their judgments. And the spiritual teacher was something I resisted for so long. And now that's what I do. That's what I am. I can explain it very easily for people who've been on the path for a long time and have had the experience like me. It was something mysterious. It was something, only the Buddha had, whatever. Like, it's making it really real, because I think in the next 10 to 50 years, way more people are going to go through that experience than ever before, because we have better tools of communication about what that is versus keeping it in the mysterious realm.
There is just, I'm just, pondering right now within as I'm listening to you speak, going, I'd love to unpack this and unpack that, and unpack this.
I know. I put a lot on there in the last 5 minutes.
Two things that I'm going to focus on. One is, you had mentioned when you were speaking just a couple minutes ago about how the mind, or, the ego mind, can snap you back into that reality. But that isn't really reality, right? Like, that's part of understanding that this 3D reality that we're experiencing as part of our journey of ascension, right, isn't like the real reality.
Well, it's perception, like there is a reality of the protective separate self. There's a reality of our self-aware observer who can observe our thoughts and feelings. But there is also the reality of that which is aware of the self-reflecting observer. And there's a perception of universal eyes with no separation. So I think of it as not so much going away from ego, or, going away from even the witness, but really getting clear on which eyes am I looking through now.
Yes.
They're just reality of that particular pair of eyes. And am I looking at this through my ego eyes, or God's eyes, or universal eyes, or multidimensional eyes? Because I can shift dimensions very, very quickly, which has to keep happening. A lot of times, you said the word ascension. There's a lot of people talking about that word, and moving from 3D to 5D, or moving up all these Ds, and it's sometimes easy to hear these people go, you really have no clue what you're talking about, because it is a transcend and include situation. It's the more you are in higher realms of perception, the more you will be clearer when you are in a perception of the ego, right? Like I'm
Yes.
still using the ego. I want to use the ego. Otherwise I'd be a bit of a mush on the
Well, it
carpet
serves
here.
a purpose. Otherwise, we wouldn't have it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. That's so important that you said that just now, because uh, I know I've done it in the past, but it's fairly rampant in the personal development industry that we speak about the ego often in terms of like we're kind of poo-pooing it, you know what I mean? But it is a part of us. And
it's a very important part, because
yeah,
when you look at people who have ascended, or who have really, or I call it stabilized their universal eyes, that's what they're pretty much 99% of the time seeing with. They're not seeing through their ego eyes anymore. Those people have only gotten to those experiences because they have developed their ego enough. Someone who has a fragile ego that's trying to get rid of it is not going to go through this portal. You have to have really strong boundaries, really strong separate self-perception. And it's through that strong separate self-perception that is the paradox that supports you to go through the gateway to unshakable inner peace. It's not about pushing it away at all. And so you see in the spiritual realm and communities, people who are trying to bypass their ego all the time, and it just creates problems after problems after problems.
Yes. My other question, the other thing I wanted to focus our conversation around is the root cause of your fear of judgment. What was that for you? What did you determine about that when you were really going deeper and peeling back the layers?
Yeah, well, we are highly conditioned body mind instruments, aren't we? It's just all childhood and cultural
Yes, society.
growing up.
Yes.
And so I think it's good to look back at, okay, where did that stem from? Where did that go? But I also think that we don't need to do as much of that as we tend to think we have to, pulling out the root cause, and I'm not going to be able to move forward until I figure this out or figure that out. But just simply looking back at my upbringing in Australia, which was a culture of what we call the tall poppy syndrome, where if you excelled more than another person, or you were taller in some way than another person, the job of the culture is to cut you down to size, so you're the same size as everybody else. And it's a very Australian thing. It's well known there. My husband says when he gets off the plane at Melbourne Airport, he can smell the tall poppy syndrome. It's very different to the American culture of, yeah, go girlfriend, you can do that. And I go into the bathrooms here nowadays because my team was saying, you should go into the bathroom one day at the hotel, because all the girls are like, oh, you were just doing that right, sister. Like, that's not what I grew up in. It was kind of a very more British, cut you down to size, sarcasm. And I was told so many times in public when I excelled at something, which I did for whatever reason. I excelled at singing, I excelled at speaking, I excelled at different things, publicly ridiculed that I thought I was up myself, but because I was excelling at something. And so that just taught me, do not think you are anything, and do not share with anyone this, that, or the other, because they will continue to do what they did in your teens and half of my 20s before I moved over to America. And I always joke, why did I move here? Because everyone here is big, bold, and self-promoting, and it's all, you're awesome and we're awesome. Not that that's all everybody, but there's a lot more of that culture here.
Even within America, it's very fascinating, because even within America, there is definitely an element of conformity. If you look at the governments and the public school systems, and
oh yes,
and there is bias, everywhere. It's such an important topic, because we are truly living in a time where if you're here on this planet right now, you're here for a reason and you're here to do something, especially if you're listening to our conversation.
Yeah.
Because I tend to attract a lot of people who are at a crossroads, or they're
Yes.
experiencing that awakening and that change, or
Yes.
the next evolution of
Yes.
a path that they've already been on.
Yes.
We are meant to step outside of what these societal standards have been, that have been established for, I mean, I don't even know how long, thousands of years. It sounds kind of crazy, but we are living in that time right now. And so I believe that it's just so important, so critical, such a necessary part of our path to be tapped into our soul's guidance, to our intuitive voice, and to be able to trust it and take action on it. And by no means does that mean being without fear, right? It's more about
Right.
the willingness to move through the fear.
Yes. And see that that's just one dimension reacting to life. It's not all of you. It's just what, the nervous system is having its reaction.
Yes. Yeah, it's very fascinating.
Absolutely. That is for sure.
Oh my gosh, I'm so loving our conversation. What would be your wisdom? What are you most feeling guided to share for people who are feeling called to make changes, whether it's an initial awakening, following their path and what lights them up and their reason for being here, or they're feeling guided to step into that next level of expansion? What would you want to share in terms of wisdom to help others avoid some of the potholes that we have experienced?
Yes. Yeah, I think, what we were talking about before, of seeing that each dimension of reality serves a purpose, as you said, and to get really practiced at shifting your focus into each of these dimensions. And anyone can do that now. Everyone knows the dimension of being so caught up in something, in your thoughts, that you can't even stop having the thoughts. I mean, everyone knows that. But you can then go, okay, what is that like? What's a thought that I've had in the last few weeks that's just spun, and just see with those eyes of that thought, and then shift to, am I aware of those thoughts? Am I aware that there is a witness to the thoughts? And now slide into the dimension of what I call the self-aware witness. It's as we grow spiritually and personally, we become more aware. We're not just the thoughts or the feelings or the sensations. And getting practice at toggling back and forth at will. So not just, oh, I happen to thankfully be in my witness right now, or, damn, I'm in my, thought spinning, but getting practice at, now I'm going to go here with my focus of attention and awareness. And now I'm going to go here. And when you get to, oh, I'm noticing that I'm aware of this spinning thought, then go to the next dimension back. Am I aware of that self-aware process that's looking at, I am aware that I've got a witness. Are you aware that you have a witness? Yeah. Okay. So then let's slide back at will to that dimension. Okay, now I've got 3 dimensions. I'm going to slide back and forward. Then maybe I can go back again. Okay, it's not just knowing I'm aware of a self-aware witness that's aware of thoughts. It's the beingness of that.
Yes.
And now I'm getting really good at sliding back. And when that happens, it's easier for people to go into what I call unwavering stillness. Right? That's the first thing that happened to me, is my mind just went still. It was a bit discombobulating when it happened, because I'm a ambitious, go-getting, dramatic woman who wants always stuff going on. And it was like nothing. is my head going to come back at any point? And it was how do we hold that is what I want to leave with people. Like, there is hope that can happen way sooner than you might think. And that to have that occur, we've first got to get used to where our focus is, get used to stabilizing it in some of these more expanded dimensions, and being able to hold it for longer as the other ones that kind of grip start loosening up. Because if I can stabilize my focus in beingness, in presence, and not in the spinning mind, the frequency of that is way more powerful than the mind spinning. And so this is going to unwind itself to a point where it's not there anymore. And that is like something to aim for, let me tell you, sister. I mean, I know what it's like to have it before and after.
Yes.
So that's just one of many, many practices that I teach at the Awaken School that are supporting people to stabilizing presence and a still mind. So then focused awareness can come through and manifest what it's wanting to manifest here, versus trying to fight all these emotions and nervous system fears and minds that are saying, no, you can't do that, and you're not good enough, and you're, all that stuff that I had.
Yeah, it's a journey.
It is.
It is. I feel like that's an important component to mention as well, is that, it isn't a matter of fixing yourself. It is that you are an evolution, that there are always new higher frequencies, new opportunities for invitations to mastery.
Yeah.
And accepting that is, what you are essentially. You're an eternal student. I know that it's very easy. A lot of people can tend to get stuck into that mode of feeling like, oh, I'm on this spiritual path, I'm on this journey, and getting kind of mired in the muck of that something needs to be fixed. It's like, no, you're already whole. You've always been whole,
Exactly. It's just they'll never feel that wholeness ever until they can stabilize their focus using their whole eyes. WHOLE. It's all perception and embodiment of that. It's not just seeing it through listening to a good, Eckhart Tolle, Deepak Chopra meditation. It's got to be through your embodied system. When you wake up, in quotes, it's not the personality that wakes up. It's not Rachael Jayne that wakes up. It's something else that comes through in perception that wakes up to itself. Mm-hmm. And so I've got to be able to have time to relax, to receive, to meditate, versus this fixing that you're talking about. I've got to fix myself. And somehow if I fix myself, I'm going to awaken. It's a dead end, because you are the one that you're trying to fix is not the one that wakes up.
Yes, it's so true. Yes, and as a society, we also tend to look at things in such a compartmentalized way. I just recorded a video this morning talking about that, about, if you want a relationship, you only focus on that, or you want more money, you only focus on that. It's like, actually, if you just focus on your growth overall, it's like any perceived issue that you look at all leads back to the same patterns of resistance, regardless of what the thing is.
Absolutely. And so that's a very key word of how can I be in less resistance to a place finally of no resistance to anything. And when I'm in no resistance to anything, I am an open, receptive channel. And then I just focus, and because it's so open and receptive.
It's so fascinating. Yes. Oh my gosh. in closing, I'd love for you to share with us anything else, anything that you're feeling guided to bring forward. And also, um, for those who are interested in connecting with you and or working with you, where is the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, I think I'm guided to share this importance about embodiment, that when you're unwinding resistance in your mind, in your head, you've got to start coming embodied in your head. Like, what does it even feel like to be in your head? Most people live in their head bubble, and spiritual seekers and yoga people or whatever, they're the worst. They're in their head bubble thinking about things all the time. There might be good things, but they're not embodied in the center
Like they're
point
not
of their
here.
head.
Yeah, like really here. Yeah.
Exactly. And so once you do more embodiment practices, you can start to relax the physical and energetic resistance. If you can't be embodied, good luck at trying to unwind the mind just through more psychology and more shadow work. It doesn't happen. That's part of it. But it's also the part of then dropping down into your throat, which was a big part for me, you know, of like, I would choke anytime someone would say you're a spiritual teacher. Oh, no, can't, no, not safe enough, not safe enough. And I had to really unwind through the embodiment of being in my throat and then in my heart. Good luck unwinding the emotional resistance you have to people, to triggered situations. You got to be in your heart and in your belly center of all the safety, security triggers we had when we were younger or not. So that, along with the psychological work and the spiritual work, I call it the trilogy of practices, made a massive difference in my life, where I know why in my 30s and 40s I was doing really well versus a lot of people. I mean personally and spiritually, not everything, but because it was psychology. I knew my psyche very well through all sorts of things, shadow work, Enneagram, whatever you can get your hands on. The somatic experience, unwinding that, is the second part of the trilogy. And the third part is spirituality, which is all about receptivity. Spirituality equals receptivity, whether you're praying, meditating, nature, it's all, am I receptive to something that's larger than me? So if you can really dial into those three things at the same time, which very few people on the planet right now are doing all three at the same time. If you can, you're going to see way quicker transformation. And so if anyone wants more information on this, as you can probably guess, I can talk for a very long time. So we have tons of videos and different free trainings and all of that. There's one I think that would be potentially the best for your community, Jennifer, is the Unwavering Stillness. It's a free mini retreat. It just takes a few hours. You can binge watch it, or you could do, 20 or 30 minutes at a time and kind of get the sense of this embodied experience that we've been talking about here. And then you can go, and so to go there, you can go to unwaveringstillness.com. So that's the free meditation retreat. Or go to the Awaken School, theawakenedschool.com. That's got an ED at the end. And we've got a lot of free masterclasses going on throughout the year. We have virtual retreats as well as our retreats in person, and kind of just look around, see what intuitively gets your attention.
Yes.
And start there. And you can reach out to me at theawakenschool.com. Our emails are on the website, and just make a connection. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. And you sent us some of that information as well. So we'll be sure to include the links to those locations in the show notes as well, to provide everyone with easy access. My goodness, this was so good.
I'm glad. I love having these conversations. I really appreciate you inviting me to have it.
Yes, and there is so much symmetry in our paths as well. I just love that we've connected, and appreciate you being a guest on the show. And I know the listeners are definitely going to appreciate it as well.
Well, thank you. And thank you for everything you're doing, Jennifer, opening the door of awakening and obviously the heart and the awakening words. We've got so much of even the words in common for a lot of people.
Oh, thank you. I fully received that.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Path of the Awakened Heart. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or pathoftheawakenedheart.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about living with an awakened heart and navigating your ascension journey, visit me at jenniferspore.com.